It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Aaron Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That means that is Aaron Saunders. Aaron, how we doing?
Another cold, kind of miserable day, huh? The weather's been weird.
Yeah.
We had I talked yesterday about my dog. So D School 86 said, what breed of dog sounds like a bulldog or a basset hound? He is not. He is a treeing walker coonhound, which sort of looks like a beagle on stilts. We've got some footage here of the sleepy beast in action, snoring away on the couch. There you go. That's
amazing. Amazing. I was wondering, I couldn't tell, because it didn't show me that was a video at first. I just thought it was a picture, and I heard the snoring. I was like, are you making that sound effect? Is that in my head that I'm hearing that just because that's what the picture looks like? But no, I've had the pleasure of meeting.
That's a live video. That's him moving about as fast as he's moved in the last 2 days. Yeah.
Also, you said about the weather. We're like a week out of when my parents would normally open their pool. That ain't. I'm looking at the weather even for the next 10 days. The highest we see is 68 degrees.
I know. I know. We're going to my cabin for Memorial Day, and the lows are in the 40s. It's gross.
Yeah, it's gross. I'm not a fan. Not a fan of this. Been a lot of rain too, so I don't know. Hopefully, we see a shift over the next 10 days there. But anyways, we are not here to report on the weather. Although, if you remember last year, I can't remember, was it when you were in Cleveland? I made that graphic of you doing the Weather Channel update thing. I think it was the snow game, maybe in Cleveland. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. It really should have been in Buffalo.
Oh man, yeah.
In January of January 24.
January 24, 23 season. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the real one. I dabble with weather reporting. I got it in there. It's in the tool belt.
Okay.
Wherever
all right.
I am.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate that. Appreciate the versatility, and so you never know what's going to happen on Steelers Afternoon Drive or what the topic conversation will be. So throw questions out there, and we'll see what we answer on here. That's what we're going to be doing a lot of today. Although, Alan, I feel like something that's pertinent to talk about. We haven't talked, I don't think, enough on this podcast about Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's been 24 hours. So
it never comes up.
He made a podcast appearance, although it wasn't nothing that was said on there was necessarily, related to the Steelers or football in general or anything that could have been taken away to have a conversation regarding.
That is 3 hours of my life I want back right there. Was that?
Yeah. Honestly, that's one of those moments. I think there's a lot of moments where people are, jealous of you being able to cover the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like fans often, I think, have a misconception of what that is. I don't know that anybody was necessarily jealous of you having to sift through that entire thing to see if there's anything.
He literally said nothing about the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was never even. How do you have? I mean, I guess I understand that these you have to sort of negotiate with certain guests and certain topics are going to be off limits. I don't know how. It's very interesting that there was never really a question in 3 hours. It wasn't like you wouldn't call it an interview. It was just a conversation,
just a discussion. Yeah.
But nothing about Aaron Rodgers and his very notable future came up in 3 hours, which interesting choice.
Yeah, I mean, even Aaron's been pretty open about talking about. I don't know, I guess the few times that we've heard him talk about it, like Pat McAfee's most notably. I feel like if Joe would have just asked him, hey, where are you at right now with it, or is anything he would have definitely answered that. At least for it to not come up is kind of odd.
Yeah, well, it never did. So like I said, 3 hours of my life down the drain there. I'll be perfectly honest. I listened to it on 2 times speed, so it was an hour and a half. But yeah, I mean, all he said was he did confirm that someone that is close to him has been dealing with cancer specifically, which aligns with what I've been told. I don't want to. it's hard to report about these things because, like, you don't get firsthand information and you don't want to talk about someone's loved one with anything less than full facts. But that sort of aligns with what I had been told. And, I think it's pretty understandable that, if you've ever had someone deal with that kind of illness where, like, you want to be there for them. And, like, sometimes there's nothing going on and you go fly to Austin to be on Joe Rogan's podcast, or you go to the Kentucky Derby, but also, like, you make those plans knowing that you might have to bail on them at the drop of a hat because somebody needs you to be there for them. And I think, like, that's the difference between what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers recently and committing to be a part of a football team is that, like, it's different when your teammates are expecting you to be there. If he calls Joe Rogan 24-hour notice and says, "Hey man, can we push it back?" I don't think that's a big deal. Certainly he can afford to blow the money on Kentucky Derby tickets that go unused. This is different when and I think this is honestly a change in approach for him. Like last year he was, on the Jets and decided not to go to minicamp, and he got a lot of grief for that. And I think
that's why.
I think this is like a pretty solid change. Like, look, okay, then I won't commit ahead of time, and I'll commit when I want to commit fully. And I think that's probably better for everyone involved. Like, it is better to not be at minicamp and not be on the team, to not be at minicamp and be on the team. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with that have come out of Aaron Rodgers' mouth and that he's done and stuff like that, which is fine. We're going to have difference of opinions on things. But, like, he was kind of in a lose-lose situation with this because, like you're saying, had he gone the same route as he had last year, signed with the Steelers and then been away, I think people would have had an issue with that. Going about it the way that he has, people have had an issue with that.
Inconveniencing forget the people for a second. You're inconveniencing your teammates. They're planning on you being there, and then you're not there. This way, they're not planning on him being there. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you are losing some of the benefit of him being there and getting a chance to work with his receivers. He's also found time to work with his receivers outside of that schedule. So, I don't get the sense that the Steelers have a problem at all with the way that Aaron Rodgers is approaching this, and that while they would generally like him to sign, like, they're not like just not giving him a deadline because they don't have a better option. They seem legitimately okay with this.
And I think that's, everything you said within there, I think it was important context to add, because I said we were going to talk about Aaron Rodgers today. Obviously, he's been the topic of conversation for quite a while, and it's because of the, impatience from the fan base to have an answer one way or another what was going to happen here. And then I think it's kind of been stirred up even more because you do see him doing other things. But I think that it was why it was so important, what you said within there, where those are commitments that can be broken. Whereas this is something totally different when you're talking about his playing future.
Yeah. And I don't think he's going to sign anywhere else. I don't think he's going to decide to not play. And I don't think the Steelers are particularly worried about those things. Just a question of waiting to commit until he's ready to 100% commit. And I think there's some, like, I understand that line of thinking. And look, I mean, he's their best option, a quarterback by far. There, like I put on Twitter today, like, there is no reason for the Steelers to just say never mind. Like, there's like like, I don't understand the thought process of why they would be frustrated with the process and decide they don't want him anymore. Like, it just doesn't. None of that makes any sense to me.
Can I say something? I mean, I know that there's going to be people in the comments that don't agree with it. I don't know what your take is going to be on this. The Geno Smith thing came obviously about so quick and I'm not relating the players to each other, but from all accounts, like people that I've talked to, it was kind of like the Luka trade where, like, only Seattle and Vegas even knew that he was going to be traded. So it wasn't like Seattle was like, hey, we're trading this guy highest bidder or anything like that. Sam Darnold, they were kind of in the market on, obviously. But like, if you take in consideration the 2 quarterbacks that were on the roster last year and any of the other feasible options, even at 41 years old, I think Aaron Rodgers was their best option. Like not even just like now their best option. I think even going back to what was on the roster last year, anything else in free agency, anything that was viable within the trade market. Like, I'm not including Geno Smith because, like I said, I think that was done. It was only going to be Vegas that could trade for him because of the relationship with Pete Carroll. So I know people might not agree with that, and not just for 2025, but also because it doesn't block you from doing anything in 26.
Also, they did it without, like, Seattle did not shop him.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
The Steelers did not have an opportunity to try to trade for Geno Smith. He was traded before other teams were aware that he might be available. And I agree. I think, and especially if Rodgers follows through with this idea that he's not worried about the money. Like, I would much rather have Aaron Rodgers for $10 million than Justin Fields for 20. Like that's a total no-brainer.
And 10 more guaranteed next year, regardless of how he plays.
Yeah, and another 10 guaranteed next year. Like that to me is like that's good business right there. So, I mean, I think the Steelers wanted Justin Fields if he was cheap. I think they had. There's some.
Do you think
value.
they were surprised by the market at all for him?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That I think the Steelers came into this offseason thinking they were going to get Justin Fields because he was going to be cheap, and then when he turned out not to be cheap, they settled on Rodgers pretty quickly after that. And I think it's. If this doesn't work, they're going to look bad for the process. There's no question about that. But I really struggle with what would have been a better one at this point.
I guess in hindsight, it doesn't matter. And this is just, I guess, more speculation unless you know for sure. But like, what do you think was a number they would have been comfortable with for Justin? Like, where do you think that they were thinking it would be?
I want to say they offered 15 guaranteed. So it was double the guaranteed money.
Oh, but that's like, I know that was like but like once it got beyond that, there was never, hey, this will go beyond this. Like, you think that was probably
I think it was pretty clear. And that it was pretty clear that the reason there wasn't a lot of dialogue before the start of the contact period was the Jets were prepared to go way above that. And I don't really think the Steelers ever
they weren't going to play ball there.
Counter offer. I think when you're that far apart, you just kind of say, all right, well, take it then, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will continue to monitor this. I don't know. You don't get the sense? I know, so nothing was said on that podcast appearance about this, but Adam Schefter said, I don't know, what did he say? Like within the next week or so. That kind of leaves it open for interpretation, how long we're talking about there. But like, I think that it could be any time, basically, that we eventually get this. But like, do you have a sense at all, like any more in terms, like, do you feel like it's definitely going to be OTAs or anything like that?
I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if he signs for the start of OTAs. It wouldn't surprise me if he signs in 2 weeks for the start of minicamp. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't sign until the summer. I think all those are still on the table. Yeah. I think they won't start training. Like if they get to the start, if they get close to the start of training camp, they're gonna have to do something else. But until then, I don't really think I don't get the sense the Steelers are really sweating this at all. Certainly not the way the fan base is.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. There's this. I don't know. I don't know what the right word is. They're not on the same.
There's a lot of unsigned NFL players out there, right? Like it's not like he's the only one that's like, oh, this horrible guy refusing to sign his contract. It's like 36 unsigned players out there just chilling. Like this is a normal process.
Yeah, it's not like great. There's some good players still available out there. Not great, but there's some quality NFL players still on the market that are going to sign and be pretty big contributors for whatever team they do sign with still. So I don't know. Yeah. We'll see how it plays out.
Starters that sign in July. Like now quarterback is a little bit different. I acknowledge that, but
yeah.
It's not. I don't think they're treating it like it's a big deal.
No, it certainly doesn't seem like. If they are, it's not been put out that way in terms of the vibes they're given outside the organization. So, Desert Cactus gave us $5, so I feel like we definitely got to bring this one up. Hey guys, there's a thought I keep coming back to as far as what's more important in terms of roster construction, a full complement of starters or star power. So I'd frame it this way: excluding the QB position, would you rather have a roster where every starter is a true starting caliber player, but none of them are all pros, or a team with 6 first-team all pros, but none of the remaining starters are really starter caliber? What's the number where the preference flips?
Well, 6 all pros is pretty unrealistic. I don't know that anybody had 6 pros last year. Right?
If you're like first and second team together,
I mean, you got 6 all pros. You got yourself one of the best NFL teams ever. Like that's,
yeah. I mean, the team that I think about is like how many all pros were on the Eagles. Like if you're in first and second
team AP, the Ravens had 6. And the Lions had 6, and the Eagles had 6. First and second team.
Okay.
Okay. All right. If you're counting second team, I guess that's reasonable.
I wonder if that's why he said 6. I wonder if he looked at that before. I mean, if not, Desert Cactus on the money in terms of the number to throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want the all-pro quarterback. Like, I know he said outside of quarterback, but like I think it's about the positional value of your all-pros. Like if your all pros are kicker, running back, free safety, off ball linebacker, guard, center, like you're probably
the
non-premium
not positions.
You're not going real far. If your all pros are quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver, defensive end, then I'm good with 4. Like I don't need another one. And so I think it's about the value of the good players. You got to have your good players at the best positions. Nobody cares who the Pro Bowl guard is. Nobody cares who the Pro Bowl or the All-Pro off-ball linebacker is. I mean, sure, Fred Warner's a heck of a player. He's not the reason the 49ers were good. Neither was Zach Bond the reason the Eagles were good. Like, it's just about, those high-value positions. I think that's what really matters. In terms of, like, the question about, like, the number versus the I mean, I think the cap kind of makes you choose. I don't think anybody has a roster that feels invincible, top to bottom. But
well, the closest thing would be the Eagles last year, I guess, would be the closest thing, right? But I mean,
yeah, I don't really think you have. I'll just say this: I don't really think you have to pick. All pros are worth the money, no matter what. You're not signing an all pro in order to have 2 like regular starters instead. Like you got to be able to do both. And you got to be able to continually do both so that here's exactly it, is that the Eagles have a bunch of all pros and a bunch of quality starters. And now they're going to let Milton Williams walk, and they're going to let Josh Sweat walk, right? They're going to let Darius Slay walk, and they've got to be good enough at drafting to replace those starters that aren't stars repeatedly. Because once you start paying the all pros, then you can't pay the starters, right? So you got to be able to cycle them. And so I think that's probably the right answer, is that you pay for the stars, and then you got to draft the starters. And if you got to pick, you pick to keep the all pros because it's the bird in the hand. You just keep the one is good, and then you keep trying to find good enough in other places.
Which we've seen, obviously, Philly be able to do. Like they are very good at replenishing. We've talked about how Howie Roseman is like, the needle mover at the GM position, the best of the best at that. I think, not necessarily from a roster construction perspective, but there's going to be some questions, obviously, at least that I have. I don't know where you stand about the Lions when you start to see turnover. Like success causes turnover, losing both their coordinators to head coaching jobs. What's that going to mean? How different are they going to look? Are they going to be able to continue their level of success? Obviously, the Ravens have also been a model of consistency despite not being able to get over that hump in the playoffs. But like this, to me, brought up 2 talking points that we've thought about in the past. You just mentioned the drafting thing. Somebody couple weeks ago asked us about, imperative to build through the draft and then kind of like fill in those gaps through free agency. And I think that's kind of pertinent here. So that's one thing that I think about immediately. And then, so like, what's your take on that in terms of, or are you still of the mindset that that's kind of the way that needs to go? Like, we're what, in terms of building through the draft and filling the gaps in free agency? Is that why, like, how does that play into this question?
Yeah, I think it's hard to fill the gaps in free agency and have have all pros. And I think when you're forced to fill gaps in free agency is when you have to pick and choose. Like, is when you have to decide where you're going to be not good enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're spending money on starters instead of spending money on stars, and that's when you have to choose. And I think it again goes back to the positional value. Like, if you're a team, can you live without a number one corner? Nope. Okay, got to have one. All right, so sign him. We'll have to live now without a quality whatever instead, strong safety. Okay. I think that's where you got to pick and choose, is when you're missing in the draft and you're having to supplement the draft with free agency for starter caliber players. That's when you end up in places where you got to pick and choose what you can do and what you have to leave for following years. I mean, we've seen, you and I have talked the last two off seasons about the Steelers having more needs than they have the ability to fill, pretty consistently. So, that's the draft misses is how you get to that place.
The other thing that kind of popped in my mind, just because we're talking about roster construction, you mentioned, like, obviously the all pro at the quarterback position is going to move the needle and change how you view your franchise. The other thing that we've talked about, though, is, QB proofing a team. So if you had obviously really good players everywhere else, but maybe just like a guy at the quarterback position, that's the other thing that popped in my mind with this question, because I start to think about, okay, what would it be like if you did have a team full of all pros, but not that guy at the quarterback spot? What does that look like? Is that the Eagles?
Like
Is that the Niners?
49ers?
Is that the Lions? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a viable path. Like, I don't think you need I think enough teams have had enough success that have proven that the quarterback does not have to be one of your all pros. It's certainly a lot easier if he is, but that doesn't have to be one.
Is there any reason, or is it just coincidence right now, that you look at the conferences and say it's a bunch of guys, like, this is to me a conversation about two conferences. The AFC, you have those dudes, a lot of those dudes at the quarterback position, and the NFC, it is more so just like more dominant teams overall, maybe better rosters, where it's just like drop a quarterback and play. And I'm not trying to take away from these quarterbacks. They're good players, but they're not the caliber of the guys.
Stinks. The bad quarterbacks are skating by against lesser competition. I see what you're saying, Smitty. I see it.
But head to head, if you're picking a quarterback, you're probably plucking from the top guys in the AFC over the NFC. But we've seen it was just the NFC team that dominated one of those AFC teams in the Super Bowl last year. So do you think there's anything to that? Is it just the way that these rosters are being built because of what else is in the conference, or is it just total coincidence with where these teams are right now?
I think it's a coincidence. It's very interesting. How many AFC quarterbacks would you pick before you picked an NFC quarterback?
I mean, at least 4, right? I mean,
sure, 4.
Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar are the top 4.
Then I think I'd probably go NFC.
Which would be
Stafford.
Who's the number 4? Okay.
Hurts, Daniels.
Oh, Daniels in the conversation already.
And then you probably got to go like Herbert. Love.
Yeah, Herbert.
Stroud. Dak.
Yeah.
Goff. Gino, Purdy.
But not
Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, Tua. The people that suck. That's basically like,
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers,
but that's interesting. Like, top four guys in the AFC, But then, like, I think there's more guys at that like second level within the NFC. Like, that's where
well, that's the question, right? Are there, or are Herbert and Tua and CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence being held down because of the better quarterback play around them in the AFC? It's an interesting question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think the Eagles couldn't win the Super Bowl with Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud? Like, I'm pretty sure they could. I think those are.
It'd be so weird to see a different quarterback in that system, like with the stuff that they do currently.
Let me say this. I think the 49ers would have won a Super Bowl with Trevor Lawrence or CJ Stroud instead of Brock Purdy.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Got the gears going there with that one. Desert Cactus. Another one that you said.
Always great questions.
Yeah. Another one that you said for sure you wanted to get in here was from our guy Randy Tobias. Always in the comments as well. Actually had a couple. We'll start with this one. Alan, is there any chance? Well, you talked about the Eagles here. We just talked about them, so I guess this is pertinent. Alan, is there any chance the Eagles or Lurie specifically would get penalized / fined for, let's say, his lack of decorum during the meeting? In addition to the potentially offensive comments he made, reporting makes it sound like some owners weren't pleased with how much time Lurie wasted. I think having Kelsey speak was a smart move, but most of the rest of what Lurie supposedly did sound like was in poor taste. I thought this was it almost seemed like it was like a skit. There's definitely going to be, like, I don't know if Saturday Night Live's going to do this. I don't know if it's going to be a South Park episode. Something's coming from this with the way that it was put out there.
What's the girl that does the Annie Agar? She should totally do 100%.
I'm sure she will.
Yeah. I think no. I mean, look, it's his forum to do what he wants. He paid the billions. No, I don't think anything's going to come of this from Jeffrey Lurie. I do think there are, when you're an owner in one of these 32 situations, you sort of have like political capital, like a politician. Like you can't. If you're Jeffrey Lurie, there better not be anything else you care about that you feel like you need to use your influence for anytime soon, because you've used it up here. You know what I mean? Like, that is it's not a punishment, but it's like an effect, right? Oh, you spent an hour talking at the owners' meetings about one play. You drug your retired former center out there to and look, he's well within his rights to do all that, but people are going to tolerate you doing all that over and over again. Like, you gotta pick your spots for that level of commitment to your bit. And so I think you see a lot of times, like, sometimes people are very critical of Bob Nutting for not, like, just going to the owners' meetings and, like, filibustering for a salary cap and, like, being intransigent and refusing to vote to approve anything until there's a salary cap and just making a mess out of the proceedings. And, like, if you do that, you essentially eliminate your ability to influence any other decision that's being made. Like, you are throwing away all of your political capital on something that, in his case, has no chance of succeeding. I think Lurie obviously had a chance of succeeding here, and that's why he did. But it is a calculated risk, and there is definitely a downside to making that kind of move. It just won't come in the form of any kind of formal punishment.
Yeah, honestly, I'm wondering how much of this was just because of the what did he? I think that he used the term, and I'll say it on here because I can. Wet dream. I think that's probably more.
Yeah. Well, he did. He basically said, "You're giving us what we want. Either you're telling us we're too good for you to, you're changing the rules because we're too good, or you're going to let us play. Like, whatever, one way or the other, we're going to win from this situation," which is correct, but funny to point it out in that forum with those kind of people.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's why there's gonna be something made of that. And then real quick, the other one here from Randy said, "Love the content. Could the Steelers make a bad wide receiver move simply to spend enough money to be cap compliant? Remember you mentioning something along the lines of needing to spend within 10% over the cap over a 5-year span. If we don't spend a lot on quarterback, it feels like they could overpay for a 1-year contract if they're still at risk of not spending to the minimum. Regardless of if the Steelers do something like this are bad contracts like this something teams ever do to be cap compliant, or is the issue just always being over the cap and not under?
I've never heard of a team making a bad signing in the NFL just to get to their 90%. The Steelers will get there by signing TJ Watt to a contract extension, and it's not going to be an issue. Also, I don't think they're like, so the CBA started in, like, I think I don't think this year is the year that it's like a 3-year average. So like, it doesn't, like what they do this year doesn't,
okay.
The problem isn't acute enough to do something dumb this year. It would be like in the future, but I've never heard of a team get up against it where they were like, oh my gosh, we have to spend money. And then do so, and then have to do so stupidly. I've heard of teams where they go into free agency saying we need to spend $100 million in free agency this year. But if you walk into free agency saying we need to spend $100 million, it's usually not that hard to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do we do? Give like Keenan Allen $20 million or something like that?
Yeah, like I can't imagine a team, if it's Steelers or anybody else, doing that.
Yeah. Right. So I don't know. Good information there. Appreciate the comments, questions as always from Randy. Anything else, Alan?
Man, it goes so fast some days.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, man. Saunders _ PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account. SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words so I can get paid. I got a story from DB. I don't even know what it is yet. I just got the text from DB during the podcast. It says, boom, new story's ready. So I'm going to go check it out and see how awesome it is, and then I'm going to share it for all of you. Make sure you sign up for SN Plus, and then you get my stories, DB stories, all that stuff ad-free. It's definitely the best way to read SteelersNow.com. Only costs about a little less than $4 a month. And you also get access to our members-only live streams. Got another one coming up in June, so stay tuned for that. And, of course, you can like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. And this one's going to be tough, Smitty, because we are at a number that's been retired for a very long time.
There's 4 players that have ever worn it.
Oh, really? 15,758, which is, of course, has been unofficially retired for Jack Lambert since 1983, 4, something like that.
84.
I'm not familiar with the other players to wear 58. I couldn't even give you a name.
Chuck Allen had it for 15 games in 70. Roger Pilath in 1966, and Ed Pine in 1965.
Good old Ed Pine, huh?
Yeah. So not much to say on that number there. We've been having some crappy luck with the numbers that we land on for this lately. It is what it is. When you do this All right. Well, anyways, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. As Alan said, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. Question for a future episode. All that good stuff down below. I'm not going to ask you to say your favorite number 58 in Steelers history. That seems kind of redundant to bring up at this point. But I will tell you, if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, to please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. I want to start reading some more of those 5-star reviews. So drop them over there. If you're listening over there, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.